Welcome to the Awakening Spirit channel. We've got a really intense story today. It makes you ask, what happens when desperation leads you to lose yourself?
Mm.
We're diving into some personal writings, really unique stuff. It's a raw, pretty unsettling glimpse into a world that honestly most of us can barely imagine.
Right.
These writings detail someone's life inside what they describe as a cult, and then their re-entry into the outside world, a world they just don't understand
It's a
anymore.
jarring transition, to say the least.
Exactly. And you shared this with us, wanting to understand the dynamics, the indoctrination, the struggle to break free, and then this crisis of identity that follows.
That-
So yeah, let's unpack this together.
This is definitely a compelling account.
Yeah.
Disturbing, too. The contrast you mentioned between the reality inside the temple and the official story we learn later,
Yeah,
it's immediately striking.
it really is.
It brings up so many questions about how belief systems get formed, how they're maintained, especially when people are so isolated. What's fascinating right from the start is how they created this entirely self-contained world.
Yeah, the narrative kicks off inside the temple itself. It's described as this complex of metal corridors all draped in red fabric, covered in these specific seals and symbols
Symbols they were taught to revere.
from their earliest memories, yeah. They even say they're not sure if they were born outside it, which just hits home how incredibly insular this upbringing was.
Totally cut off.
And in this world, there's Demiurge. He's the main caregiver, the teacher, essentially the father to everyone there.
A very loaded name, demiurge.
Hmm.
In some Gnostic traditions, it's like a lesser creator god subordinate to the true one. Definitely suggests a specific kind of theology might be at play here.
Right, positioning him as this central, powerful authority. And notably, the narrator never knew their mother, had zero interaction with women until very recently in the story.
Which is another layer of control. Shaping social reality and daily life sounds intense. 7 hours meditation, plus studying symbology.
It's highly regimented, and the core teaching was about an old world, one with grass, water, animals, but also human conflict that apparently ended.
So the temple community sees themselves as survivors.
Exactly, a pocket of survivors whose work, they believe, will one day purge the demons now inhabiting the plains outside. Strict boundaries, naturally. Stay inside the temple walls, that's your sanctuary.
Creates that powerful us versus them dynamic, makes you dependent on the group for safety, for meaning. It's classic cult indoctrination stuff, really.
And the description of Demiurge himself is vivid. Late
Yeah.
50s, early 60s maybe, this chronic overbite, necrotic teeth, apparently smelled of urine.
Grim details.
Wore a distinctive red and black robe while everyone else wore white. Sets him apart visually, too. He was deeply involved in, well, everything. All stages of the narrator's development, including something called their branding.
That sounds ominous. We'll probably circle back to that.
Definitely. Then there's this other figure, Salmon, another senior leader, but apparently never seen.
Just stories.
Stories read from this ornate wooden booth taken from the Book of Seven, and these stories were about Oz,
So there.
portrayed as this great warrior who's going to reclaim the world, someone who can see through demon illusions. He becomes this huge messianic figure.
So Oz provides the hope, the ultimate purpose for enduring this harsh life. A savior figure.
Pretty much. Joining him is the greatest honor. But then there's this incident with the booth Salmon used. The narrator gets curious, peeks inside.
And what do they find?
Just a tape recorder.
Oh,
And the punishment for seeking that forbidden knowledge? Demiurge brands their tongue with a silver needle.
brutal. A lesson in speaking only the truth, as defined by them, I suppose, and a warning against any curiosity to deviate.
Exactly. It's chilling. It just reinforces that control. Don't question, don't look beyond what you're told.
And that ties into the other branding you mentioned, the mark of the septical.
Right. At age 14, children get branded on their side. Hot iron rod, specific symbol. It's framed as a test of commitment.
But rejection is unheard of, the narrator says.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like much of a choice. It feels more like a permanent marking, a physical binding to the group. More psychological manipulation than a genuine test.
Makes sense. Severing ties to anything outside, creating this visceral link. And the meditation practices sound pretty extreme, too.
Daily sessions, sure, but also these extended periods in special chambers. Dimly lit, airless, apparently, on days marked by Oz.
And there's something about smoke.
Yeah, grated floors, vents pumping in this sweet, cloying smoke. Sounds almost like sensory deprivation, maybe some kind of psychotropic effect.
Could be. Designed to alter consciousness. Increased suggestibility, perhaps. Discipline was absolute, clearly. There's that story about a child collapsing.
Oh, right. A kid collapses. Demiurge claims his eye injury is actually a gift from Oz. Says it'll make him see clearer.
Just twisting reality to fit the narrative, reinforcing Oz's supposed benevolence, no matter how cruel things get, that unwavering faith despite evidence. It's a hallmark of these environments.
Totally. So fast forward a bit. By 16, the narrator is highly skilled in symbology. Norse, Celtic, Choctaw, Horkamong symbols practiced constantly. Basically, an expert in this very specific controlled field.
Groomed for a purpose, it sounds like.
And then comes the seer, the hidden third parent. This is where it gets really bizarre.
Okay, I'm ready.
Demiurge leads the narrator to this industrial door, always hidden before. Behind it, a small concrete room, then a stone wall pit, filled with insects, maggots. And lying among them is the seer, wearing a rubber suit, but his face is eaten away, down to the skull.
That's horrifying. And
Yeah.
this seer is meant to be important?
Demiurge says he's the only way to communicate with Oz. He relays info to Demiurge. And apparently, Oz has a specific purpose for the narrator, which is about to be revealed.
Wow. So this grotesque figure, shrouded in decay and suffering, is the sacred link. It just enhances the mystery, the perceived power of Oz, I guess,
Yeah.
and reinforces how corrupted the outside world is supposed to be.
Yeah, it's a really powerful, disturbing symbol of their whole twisted reality. And relying on this one single horrifying point of contact, it isolates them even more, makes them totally dependent.
Makes sense.
So after meeting the seer, the narrator gets special treatment. Eating with Demiurge walks to higher, more industrial floors of the temple, clearly being prepped for something.
Building anticipation, maybe reinforcing their special status.
And then 2 weeks later, Demiurge reveals the real meaning of the septical brand. To them, it's devotion, right? But he says to demons, it signifies ownership.
Ownership.
Yeah, the narrator's mission. Go outside the temple, slay demons, and brand their bodies with the septicle to create an expendable army for Oz.
Whoa. Okay. That's quite the purpose. All the training, the isolation, the branding, it all leads to becoming a killer for Oz.
It's terrifying. And the narrator describes developing this intense hatred for the demons during months of private tutoring with Demiurge about the old world and these supposed replacement for humanity, performing rituals to generate prana.
That process of dehumanizing the enemy is absolutely crucial, isn't it? It's how you get people to commit acts they'd normally find abhorrent.
Absolutely. Then there's a leaving feast, small, before the departure. But here's something incredibly unsettling the narrator realizes while writing this account.
What is it?
They can't remember the faces or names of any of the other children they grew up with. Trying to remember gives them a headache.
Amnesia about their peers. That's deeply significant.
There's just one fleeting memory, a boy carving symbols into his own thighs. But otherwise, blank.
It speaks to that intense focus on the individual's role, maybe a suppression of any bonds that could threaten their devotion to the mission, or perhaps a trauma response.
Could be. So the departure. Demiurge gives them a pure black robe, white symbols inside for stealth, apparently, plus the branding iron and a dagger with carved sigils.
The tools of the trade.
They exit the temple through a shipping container, stepping into the old world. And the first impression, beautiful. The sun feels like a mother's touch.
Such a stark contrast to the temple. That moment of almost wonder.
But Demiurge just leaves and locks the door behind them.
Stranded. Cast out into this world they know nothing about, except that it's full of demons they have to kill.
Right, and that initial wonder vanishes pretty quick. They feel overwhelmed in the city, later identified as Detroit, hiding from everything they perceive as a threat. There's a mention of encountering a rotting sign.
Just total disorientation, sensory overload after a life of confinement.
And then come these fragmented memories, breaking into a hotel, using the knife and the brand on foot soldiers. But their screams sounded human, and their corpses wept after being branded.
Oh, man. That's the reality starting to crack through the indoctrination, isn't it? The dawning, maybe subconscious realization that these demons might actually be people.
It seems like it. The psychological unraveling really starts there. Waking up under a park bench, surrounded by police cars, and being taken away.
Which leads us to the other side of the story. The truth, as the narrator puts it, right before warning us.
Yeah, they claim to be writing this final part from a security guard's booth, saying the guard's blood is reaching the door, that capture or death is imminent. It's incredibly dramatic.
Sets the stage for a revelation, I suppose.
And then we get the official story. That the narrator isn't a teenager raised in a cult, but actually a 38-year-old web designer. Grew up middle class near Ann Arbor.
38. Not 16. That's a huge discrepancy.
Huge. According to this version, back in 2018, their mother found them unconscious. There was a cloaked man fleeing the scene. The narrator had a lethal dose of DMT, other drugs, and a third-degree burn on their side, shaped like a septicle.
The septical burn is real in both stories,
Mm-hmm.
but the context,
Right.
drastically different. DMT, other drugs, that could certainly induce intense hallucinations, couldn't it?
Absolutely. So, in this official account, they disappeared from the hospital, were found a week later in rags, arrested for a stabbing incident.
The foot soldiers, perhaps.
Sounds like it. They pleaded insanity, spent years in a psychiatric hospital diagnosed with recurring delusions about a cult, the temple, killing demons, Oz, everything we just heard from their perspective.
It's a complete flip. One narrative frames it as indoctrination and escape, the other as mental illness possibly triggered by trauma and drug use. The conviction in the first telling, though.
It's powerful. And then the escape from the hospital. Apparently, after a year without setbacks, they were trusted with a plastic pen.
And they used it. How?
First, to write symbols on their cell walls, which they claim worked, suggesting the symbols still hold power for them. Then they sharpened it, used it as a weapon to get out,
Resourceful in a terrifying way, driven by that same belief system.
which leads to that final desperate warning right from the edge. Oz is the only one who'll fight for you. Let him.
Wow. Even after everything, even with the potential psychiatric explanation load out, the allegiance to Oz remains. That's chilling.
It leaves you in such an ambiguous, really disturbing place, that contrast between the controlled reality they described and this bewildering external world. What does it tell us about belief? About identity? The sheer psychological impact of isolation?
It's profound. The fragility of identity, definitely. And the power of narrative, whether it's the temple's narrative or the psychiatric narrative, a story is shaping this person's reality. The inconsistencies, the two versions, they force you to question memory, manipulation, the very nature of reality itself. What detail stands out most to you?
For me, it's maybe that lingering power of the indoctrination. The fact that even when presented with this completely different, maybe more plausible explanation involving drugs and trauma, the original belief system, the need for Oz, persists so strongly in that final warning. It's like the escape wasn't truly complete. What about you?
I think, for me, it's the seamlessness. How convincingly the narrator inhabits both realities within their writing. The conviction in the first part,
Yeah.
the acknowledgement of the second part, and then snapping back to the Oz warning. It underscores how deeply these belief systems can embed themselves, how they literally shape perception. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, about the more subtle systems and narratives that shape our perceptions every day.
That's a really good point. And that final warning, let Oz fight for you, it leaves us with such a heavy question. How do we tell truth from delusion, especially within ourselves? What forces are actually shaping what we see and believe?
Yeah.
This deep dive, it really offers no easy answers, does it? But maybe it sparks that deeper thought about the systems, the stories, the narratives that can hold us captive. Physically, yes, but mentally too, affecting our self-awareness or sense of freedom.
And ultimately, how do we break free from whatever holds us captive? Whether it's an external cult or internal delusions,
Yeah.
or maybe something in between.
Exactly. A question this whole unsettling account really leaves us to think about.